welcome to Success for Depressed. And I am Kerry Finsand, your host. This show is all about helping solopreneurs navigating mental and physical health. Today's guest is Jill Anderson of Jill Anderson Coaching. Today, we're going to learn more about what trauma is, and she's going to discuss her services that she offers and kind of go further into that. So welcome to the show, Jill.
Thanks, Kerry. It's great to be here, and I'm excited to get in this conversation with you. It's important.
I appreciate it, and also you are my first guest, so that's pretty exciting for me, and you'll be number one in my book.
Excellent. All right. Well, let's do this.
So I thought it would be great to have a conversation with you. We connected via LinkedIn, and I saw that your specialty is trauma, and that's something that I don't know a lot about. And I think for a lot of people, they just think of trauma as something major, that someone coming back from war or something, or someone had a really bad experience as a child. But I know that trauma is, I guess, a lot more than that. And I want you to help educate me and the listeners about what, trauma is.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an important topic because we hear a lot about it lately, and that's a really good thing because we want, especially as May is Mental Health Awareness Month, we really want to take the stigma off of talking about mental health and that it is important. But trauma is, it can be, one of the big T traumas: war, natural disaster, violent crimes. And then they have what they call the little T traumas that just don't rise to that level. But those are the ones that kind of layer upon each other. Those are your adverse childhood experiences. Those are, all the heartbreak, the betrayals, the bullying that goes on in school. It's all those sorts of things that sort of add up. And what they do is they stifle our inner voice. They make us play smaller, and we show up in a different way than if we hadn't experienced those, if that helps.
Yeah, I think that's a good starting point. And maybe you could give us a little background about how you got into coaching and why this is something that's, important to you.
Yeah, I grew up in a very dysfunctional home, and I married into a dysfunctional family. And so it was all of that impact. And when my son was born, he was about 2, and he did something, and I just yelled at him. And I thought, I don't want to be that mom. I don't want to be that person that yells. But we tend to parent like we were parented. And so it's, the trauma is in the water, so to speak, if you will. And all that's going to rise up in these moments of upset. And so I took a parenting course through a coaching organization, and it just was such a great fit, and it helped break that cycle for me. And so that's what I'm bringing forward to my clients.
So I think that's one thing it's nice about when you are going through some type of educational process, and even if you're going through that process to teach others, you're going to learn so much about yourself. And so explain a little bit more about what this coaching program, what it incorporates and how it works.
Yeah, I have my bachelor's in psychology from Portland State University.
Go Vikings.
Go Vikings. Yes. And I'm certified through, for ICF, I'm certified through through ICF for trauma-informed coaching through a company called Move in the Human Spirit. And they're the only company globally that is certified through ICF for trauma-informed coaching. I'm certified through the Association for Trauma Recovery Coaching, which is outside of ICF, but on still the coaching side of therapy. And so what it looks like, the difference between coaching and therapy is coaching takes the client where they're at today, and then how you want to move forward. And we'll go back to the extent that we're going to look at, oh yeah, this happened back then. How is it showing up now? And where do you want to be? As opposed to therapy, we'll go back and talk more about it. Coaches don't diagnose, we don't treat. And so people who have major depressive disorders, people who are actively suicidal, they definitely need to be with a therapist.
And that's where there's this thing about coaching. You think about it, when you're a kid, if you're playing sports, you have a coach, and sometimes you have a great coach, and that great coach really can instill a lot in you for a long time. Maybe it's a methodology of just following sticking to a plan, like a workout plan, for example. And I always know that for me, coaching helps me out a lot. And I've only done coaching from a business standpoint and like a personal training standpoint. And the personal training standpoint was just great just to have someone to talk to and kind of coach you along. So I can see a lot of value with the coaching aspect. And then I understand also the aspect that you have, a counselor to work with to kind of balance out the two. And I personally see a counselor myself, and it's very helpful, and I appreciate that. But I do like this idea of coaching, someone to talk to, and kind of you're looking at it from like a holistic standpoint. You're kind of pulling everything together from different perspectives. So I think that's a great thing to have coaching. For coaching for you, what are some of the things that you work on to kind of help people deal with trauma?
Oh, good question. I work with teenagers and a lot of adults, but the teenagers, especially coming out of, the COVID lockdown, there was so much isolation, and teenagers are hardwired for connection with their friends. And so having that, year and a half or so of isolation was really hard on them. And how do they step forward? So we do a lot of regulating and downplaying the nervous system, so that's really where trauma lives. It's in our nervous system, and it's how we're reacting to what's happening in front of us.
I see.
And there's a lot of talk about mindfulness, and mindfulness isn't meditation. It isn't, being kind or nice. It's being able to experience what's happening to us in the present moment and being able to respond to it as opposed to react to it.
Okay. And I know, and just kind of learning from your website, some of the different practices that you have. One of them is called Brainspotting. Can you tell me a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, Brainspotting came out of EMDR, and it's just basically a gentler version of that. But we all store memories as like capsules, if you will, in our brain. And if you ever watch someone when they're telling a story, they'll look and then they'll just lock onto a spot. And what the brain does is it just taps into that visual memory, and then we can process it from just talking about it. And the beautiful thing about Brainspotting is they don't actually have to talk about it. You can just think about what happened, and then we notice that there's a lot of somatic that goes with it, which is what you're feeling in your body, and they're just noticing what they're feeling. And that's what's a little more gentle about it, is they don't have to say any words. They can just say what they're like. I'm feeling this tension and feeling this, movement. And then what we're really looking for is the energy to just pass through and dissipate. And I do somatics, which is of the body that's noticing that. And then I'm also practicing internal family systems. And all of these have been opened up for coaching, which is so beautiful, because these are different modalities that they can use in therapy as well as in coaching. And kind of my ideal client would be someone who's had 10 years of therapy and said, it didn't work for me. And if that didn't work, then what? Because it doesn't leave them with a lot of options. And that was the case for me. It just didn't work. Coaching was a different modality, and it really made a difference. So there's something for everyone.
So if someone wanted to get into trauma coaching, what's kind of the process? Obviously, you probably first have some type of consultation meeting and then kind of discuss to see if this is a good fit for both parties or something. And then from there, you is there some type of plan that you go through or something? I'm just kind of really curious about how that works.
You mean how a coaching
session
session
how does a coaching session start exactly?
Yeah. So clients connect with me, and we always do a 30-minute discovery call. And that's their opportunity to meet me and talk with me and ask questions and make sure that that's a right fit for them. And even if a parent reaches out to me and has a conversation with me, I still have a discovery call with the teenager if they're calling for their teen, so that teen can be on board, because you can bring someone to a session, but if they're not wanting to be there, they're not necessarily going to do the work or benefit from it. So it just lets them meet me and get on board with the process.
Well, I think one thing that, just kind of jumping back to when you're talking about, it's kind of the mindfulness of really trying to feel the feels, trying to understand that. And that's one thing for me. More recently, I've got into that in my own practice. And before, it's just you kind of you bottle things up, you don't pay attention to them. But I've definitely noticed just be in the moment and actually feel like, am I happy? Am I sad? How does my body feel? And I think that's a great practice to have. And when you do that with your clients, is it a lot of times where they're kind of closing their eyes kind of thing, and kind of focusing on themselves in the moment? Is that kind of the typical process or of how it would work? They sit there and they kind of close their eyes and you kind of talk them through kind of getting in that moment, or?
Oh, it just depends. It depends on
True,
who,
yeah.
who I'm talking with. A lot of people are very comfortable closing their eyes and going inward. People who aren't used to feeling or recognizing what they're feeling inside, that can be a little bit scary. So we start a lot more gentle. They can leave their eyes open. They can just, one of the best ways to get someone comfortable with feeling that way is just to kind of see how they orient in a room. So where do their eyes naturally gaze to? What do they like to be holding in their hand? If there's a scent in the room and they're drawn to that. So we start to notice those things, and then we can move more into emotions, because emotions are tough. They're sometimes they're hard to identify, and what's happening in the moment is only about 20% of what we're thinking and feeling, and the rest of it is emotion. So if you think of the iceberg and the tip you can see, that's what you're cognitively seeing and thinking in the moment. And the emotions are what are under the water. And this is what rises up at these moments when we go, I don't know where that came from, but it's always there. And so it's just getting people really comfortable with feeling that. And on the big spectrum of emotions from, happy to really angry, most people tend to want to stay over here and avoid this. And leaning into, there's no bad emotions. There's some emotions that are harder to experience. And so we just want to gently lean into that and get comfortable with acknowledging, yeah, wow, that really was hard. Yeah, that kind of sucked. And then we can bring it back a little more neutral. But if we keep avoiding the bad, that's what's going to bubble up from our iceberg into those moments when we don't want it to, like when somebody cuts us off in traffic and we say something we wish we wouldn't have.
Yeah, that's where what I've learned is that you have that pause for a second, and then it helps you make a better decision in theory, and that's so you won't react to that person as much if you kind of say, am I mad maybe because I'm running late and I'm just, in a bad mood and it's all really me, and yeah, maybe someone cut me off and stuff happens, it's not fun, but what's it going to do if I freak out, So in my own practice, I've been looking at that as well. I really like the iceberg visual, because I think that really is such a great visual, because everything is below this. Most of it's below the surface, and people don't understand what's below the surface, and they only see what's above the surface. So that's a great analogy. I guess another thing I would be interested in is when people are talking about trauma, it's probably walking a tightrope there, because you don't want them maybe to experience things too much, because maybe it will set them back. So I guess how is the coaching kind of help them where they want to explore something, but in maybe kind of in a safe way?
Yeah, that's a great question also. And, just really quickly back on the emotions. Emotions are great information, but they're not directives. So we can be angry and not.
That's a great quote right there. I'm using that.
Yeah, anytime. It's important, because people start to think, oh, I'm angry. And it's that pause that allows that moment of reflection. But ask me your question again.
So basically with trauma, it's like walking maybe a tightrope a little bit, where they want to improve that experience so it's not so hard on them, but re-experiencing trauma in the practice or getting coached, it could be a scary moment for them. So I guess what's the balance? Is it some type of baby steps or something, or?
Yeah. We always start with resourcing. So it's your brain doesn't know the difference between a perceived event and an actual event. So talking about something that was really scary can be really scary and can be activating. And that's why it's, people are so easily traumatized, And so through the somatic practice, we really strengthen their resources. And, we'll talk about, oh, I see you're, rubbing your sweater, what is that feeling that you like about that? And they might say something about it just makes me feel safe. So we're always looking for areas and strengths. Like, what are my clients' strengths? What do you love to do? What would people say about you? And then we build on those, and we notice, as we're talking about that, how does it feel to say those things? How do you feel inside? And then we just slowly grow that. And then once we have, a really strong resource, then we can turn around and look at something that's a little more upsetting. And so there's a lot of pendulating back and forth between, we're going to look at what's going really well, and then we're going to look at what's not going so well. And then we're just going to go back and forth. And that allows us to just do this gentle dance, if you will, into a more upsetting topic. But it's really important to strengthen the resourcing first, because that builds trust between me and the client, between the client and themselves. And that's what's most important.
I like that dance. That's a good way to look at that, just because kind of moving back and forth. Where are some good resources to learn more about that? I'm interested in learning more about it myself. Any good YouTube videos or anything online you can think of, or books, or?
Oh yeah, you can. There's a lot of ways to look at Peter Levine. Has a lot of different videos. It's Dr. Peter Levine, and he's the founder of the Somatic Experiencing Institute. And he has some great videos to watch. There's a book that's, oh my gosh, probably 30 years old at this point, by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, called The Dance of Anger. But it's really beneficial in terms of learning how, specifically anger works. Because if you have this dynamic set up with whomever you're speaking with, and this is your pattern, you do this, I do this, you do this, I go there. Well, this talks about breaking that pattern and what that looks like. And let's just say it's between, a husband and a wife, and they're battling. And so they're locked in this dance. And so what one does is just changes those steps and says, whoa, I'm going to alter this. And then it forces everyone else to alter their dance as well. And that's when you can open up these conversations and start, looking at, why are we doing that? I don't even know. And then you get into this conversation of, let's see, flip the script. What would work? What's working well? And let's do more of that.
So it's kind of that, your instant mentality is to get upset over something, and the other person's instant mentality is to respond being upset too. And so if least one person looks at it differently, for sure there's some type of change. But if both people look at it, then there's definitely be a positive change. So I see that dance back and forth. I'm gonna get those resources from you and then include those in the show links, because I think that sounds really interesting. Maybe it's because I like to dance. That's why I like this analogy too. So, but
yeah, I'll definitely send those to you. And it's good to find a lot of different resources that you can use. And, whether it's books, it's podcasts like this, which is going to be amazing. It's talking with someone. You can talk with, your best friend. It's just, the importance is to talk to someone and find someone that you feel safe with.
Yeah, I think those are good points. I think the other thing I kind of want to pivot to is, the collective trauma we've all been dealing with the last few years with this thing, this pandemic. And for everyone, it's been a different way, where some people have thrived through it. Others have had to pivot their businesses through it. I know for me, it increased my anxiety and just what's going on in the world, all the uncertainty. So one of the things I've really been noticing, since I have a lot of friends that own businesses, especially in the hospitality industry and the fitness industry, which are two ones that were pretty much crushed, I want to talk about trauma in business. I want to start off with a nice opinion piece that I read in a Canadian publication called Globe and Mail. The quote is, "Don't underestimate the trauma that business owners are enduring because of COVID-19." Let me say that one time again. Don't underestimate the trauma that business owners are enduring because of the pandemic. That was written by a gentleman named Rob Scissornick in the Globe and Mail. So I'm not sure if you have any customers or if you experienced any friends or just done any research on any type of trauma in the business space in the last few years, or if you haven't, just what you've seen happen.
Yeah, I think we've all watched it, and it's been devastating for service industries, especially the hospitality. And it's important to, especially if you are a business owner, to, find a way to be grounded in what is working well and what you really want. Because I heard this beautiful analogy about, being relaxed and calm is like being in the river. And when the snow falls, the snow just falls and becomes part of the river. And when the river is frozen over and the snow falls, it just piles up on it and it creates this pressure that then, it causes these fissures. And so that's what we're trying to avoid. And the collectiveness is just being able to, come at it from a trauma-informed perspective. And what's going to make my customers feel safe? What's going to make my employees feel safe? What's going to make people feel safe to come back out in society? And this is what we're all grappling with right now, is how do we emerge from this, collectively into a healthy environment.
And you're a small business owner, and obviously it affected you. Did you pivot to doing like Zoom type sessions with your customers, or did you just, how did you handle that?
Yeah, I had never heard of Zoom, before I'd heard of, Teams meetings. But yeah, you pivot and nobody comes. There's very few people that actually come into my office anymore. I'm kind of excited when they start doing that
person,
again.
yeah.
But everything's telehealth. And it's been, the upside of COVID is that it has made everyone have to pivot, and big meetings before where people weren't able to attend because of some physical limitation, and they were saying, why can't you just put this on video? And they're like, oh, we can't do that. And now all of a sudden, oh, look what we can do. Everything's online. And so there have been some really incredible areas of growth that have come from this. And there have been some areas that we've seen where this needs some attention.
The one thing that I think that has been the positive is the resilience of some of these business owners, how they keep pivoting. I know a guy that in Portland owns Imperial Bottle Shop. It's a beer bar. And he's just tried so many different things out. He's tried making his place a pop-up for warm ciders and warm cocktail drinks for people to be outside and have during the pandemic in the early days. All types of different things. He's got like a bagel pop-up, I think he's done at one point. So I really like to see that. And it excites me to see people try. And I know for him, it's got to be just so exhausting to keep trying. And especially when it's not your fault. And there's no playbook on how to get through this. Everyone's trying to figure it out. So I think that's one thing that we have to think about too, is just to be easier on ourselves, because this is kind of new to everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And that the whole not your fault part is so important, because the hard part in this is there's no bad guy to blame. There's COVID, and, rules came down, and you can be upset with people, but ultimately it's because of this pandemic that this has happened. And that ability to pivot really gets into the fixed mindset or a growth mindset. And when you're in a fixed mindset, it's hard to think of what else might be possible. But that's where it's really important to look around you and start looking at, what else could we try? What else might be true? What else might be plausible? And if it doesn't work, let's try something else. And, Simon Sinek has an amazing talk on growth mindset, if you're interested.
Oh yeah.
Anything
sent my way. I mean, I love to listen and learn to things. I think another thing I'm just kind of thinking about back when you're talking about with your business, kind of how you pivoted. I think in some ways the telehealth, I mean, it's good to see people in person too, but I think the telehealth then opens up you as a business owner too, because you can talk to people in a wider area, as well as for scheduling. Like I do some counseling, and I've only been doing telehealth now for a couple of years. And I like it because it saves you a lot of time, and you're in your house, so you can be more comfortable too. So I think that's might have been a benefit to your practice.
Yeah, definitely. And it's allowed me to have clients that are all over the country. So I don't have to just see people who are in the, Portland metro area. I have clients who are in Wisconsin, and it's lovely to just be able to, we have to navigate time changes, but it's really expanded, who I can see. So that's absolutely been a benefit.
That's great. So there's definitely some positives, but the other thing I was thinking about is for you just to handle, being a being a solo entrepreneur as yourself, it can be lonely. And so what are some things that you do to kind of feel like part of a community and kind of feel motivated and stuff every day?
I do a lot of online training, and so I feel like I'm never alone. There's always a training to go. It's important to be involved. I'm involved in 2 different networking groups, and those are starting to meet in person again. It's important to really lean into what you find joy in, because trauma puts us into our brain goes into this conservation mode. And the first thing to fall off is things that are fun. You'll hear people saying, I don't have time for that anymore. And that's exactly where you need to go, is something that brings joy. And so it's important to be outside, go for walks, hike, golf, whatever, brings you joy. And so that's what's really important to lean into.
Yeah, definitely. We both like to get out into nature and go for hikes. And it's too bad because like our society now, we're all just so connected, and it's great we're connected online, but also we need to get out into Mother Nature and be a human, touch the earth, touch the ground, and get your feet wet in the water. And I'm fortunate that I like to do that stuff. My wife's very active outdoors person, and so if I'm not motivated, she's also helpful to drag me along, and then I enjoy it. So. You have a quote on your website. It says, "Together we gently build sustainable momentum of health while learning coping, healing, and empowerment skills that equip you with the needed tools to move through challenges and losses." I really like that quote. I want you to maybe speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, it's important to remember that trauma cuts us off from relationship. And it cuts us off with relationship from ourselves first. And we start thinking, I'm the only one going through this. Everybody else has it figured out. So through coping skills, we look at, really kind of digging in on what is really true. And are you just believing what you're thinking? What's your evidence that this is the case? And what's your evidence, for what's working well? You can see it. How do we know this is working well? Oh, well, because I'm feeling better. And so through learning coping skills, it just is allowing them to slow down in order to step back into whatever area they're feeling limited in.
Is there any specific practices in coping that are a good starter point for just anyone to start using?
Yeah, just connecting to your breath.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
And, really remembering to take a deep breath. And if that doesn't feel good, go outside, feel the sun on your skin, just do a big stretch, something that moves you from where you're at right now, and just do something different. Tony Robbins says, just take a step to the left, literally just take a step and you're in a different place.
Oh, it's so true. It's like, I know for me, if I exercise in the morning and just go to get myself to the gym, it maybe takes me a little while to get going some days, but that was like today. And then I felt just amazing afterwards. So it's just that first step, the inertia you need to kind of get going and everything. I definitely agree with that. I think you've really answered this. Obviously, this is a very deep topic, and I wanted kind of a general understanding of trauma and some resources which we'll provide to people. So I think this is a great starting point. And then in the future, as I learn more, I would like to have you come back again, and so we can maybe deep dive into maybe a specific topic. And I think it would be a lot of fun to do that.
Oh, I would love to. And thank you again for having me on. And I'm happy to get you whatever resources you need that will be of benefit to you and your listeners.
I definitely appreciate that. I also want to make sure that we help get the word out about the practice that you're doing. Where can people find out more about you and your practice?
They can find me online at www.jillandersoncoaching.com. And I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook and Instagram as well.
Yes, and I've been liking your comments a lot on LinkedIn lately, your daily mindfulness and other posts you've been doing on LinkedIn. I appreciate those.
Thank you.
So again, thank you for being on the show. I just want to thank everyone for listening. People can find me on my website at kerryfinsand.com, which should be launched by the time this airs. I'm pretty excited about that. And my ending note is, remember, you are not alone in life or business.